Eu não gravei por causa do conteúdo, né, que a gente estava conversando. Ok. So, what's a canonical clause? O que é uma canonical clause? Do que ela consiste? E como julgar se é ou não é? Esse exemplo 1. Mr. Buck donated a wishbone to the Museum of Natural History. Se a gente lembrar, a canonical clause tem aquela estrutura S, E, C. Quando a gente usa C, pode dar a falsa impressão de complement, no sentido de predicative complement. Não. Esse C é uma generalização de predicative complement, objeto direto, objeto indireto, todo e qualquer complemento para essa estrutura que tem um sujeito e uma ação, né? Ou um estado, né? SVC, SVC, Subject Verb Complement. É o caso dessa primeira oração. Mr. Buck donated a wishbone to the Museum of Natural History. Is this canonical?
Yeah, it is. Because it starts with the subject, then there's the verb, and then the rest of the phrase.
That's good. So Mr. Buck, which is the subject, donated a wishbone to the Museum of Natural History. This whole thing here is the predicate, whose predicator over here is the verb. It is the only verb, so it's okay. Donated is a predicator. Now let's look at the functions of the Museum of Natural History. What kind of phrase is the Museum of Natural History? Is this a noun phrase? Is this a verb phrase? Is this a determinative phrase?
I think this is a verb phrase because it relate I can say the main information is the fact that he donated the wishbone.
Oh, you're talking about the whole predicate. Okay,
Yes.
this is a verb phrase for sure. But how about this last bracket here? The Museum of Natural History. What's the role it's playing in the sentence, in the clause?
It's indicating the place that the wishbone was donated.
Yeah, the
So
receiver of the donation. So we
yeah.
call it the indirect object. As
Oh
we learned,
yeah.
as we learned, okay, this is a prepositional phrase for sure because of the. But as we learned, Museum of Natural History is the name of some place. It plays the role of the indirect object, and because of being an object, it's also a noun phrase, right? Let me see. Uh, so no, it's not really an adverb. Okay, it's not an adverb of place. It's the receiver. I'm talking about adverbs because I saw that in the chat. It is in fact the indirect object. It is the direction of the donation. Okay. Now take the case of the wishbone. A wishbone is what was donated. Okay. So it's the object itself donated. It's the direct receiver of the action. It received the action directly from Mr. Buck in the direction of the Museum of Natural History. That's why I say Mr. Buck is the subject, a wishbone is the direct object, the Museum of Natural History is the indirect object, and this whole thing here, donated a wishbone, blah, 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 is the predicate, whose head is donated, which is the predicator. Okay? Any questions about this first one?
Just something that I
Yes,
didn't
Matheus.
remember when I was doing this exercise. Predicator is the verb, right? Just the
Predicator,
verb.
yes, no, yes. The main normally the main verb, okay? It's the head
Okay.
of the predicate, okay?
Okay.
And as the predicate is a core of action, it's logical that the core of action would be the main verb of the verb phrase, okay? Now the next one, after the final song, The drummer hurled his sticks at the crowd. Now, how about this? Is this the SVC structure, the canonical clause? Would you say this is canonical?
No, because the complement comes before the subject.
Yeah, so how could you turn it into canonical? Let's see an example here. Okay, it's one of the possibilities. I arranged the sentence like this: the drummer hurled his sticks at the crowd after the final song. Okay, I just put the adverb phrase without a comma at the end of the sentence. Okay, although it's not very natural, but it fits our purposes of analyzing. Okay, so this is the way, or this is in fact when the action happened. Okay, and it's not that important for our syntactic analysis of the other objects. We can call it just an adverb phrase, and that's all. Now, I use the color standard, as you can see. So blue means the subject, the drummer. And how about the predicate? The predicate is this whole thing here. Hurled his sticks at the crowd after the final song. Now, we already know, because of our manipulation into a canonical structure, positive, declarative, non-exclamative, and so on, okay? We know that this adverb phrase is here just as a rearrangement. We have now the simpler: the drummer hurled his sticks at the crowd. Again, we have the same case of the above sentence about Mr. Buck. The drummer is the subject. The only verb in the sentence is the predicator. It's the verb to hurl. Hurled his sticks. The crowd was the direction of the hurling, so it's the indirect object. Do you all agree that the crowd, if you doubt it, you can take a look at the preposition. You know that indirect objects require a preposition. But this is not I'd say the conceptual technique. Okay, the conceptual technique consists of identifying the direction of the action. This is the concept of indirect object. It is the direction of some action or the direction of some state of being. So the crowd is the indirect object, and his sticks are the thing that he threw away, that he hurled. So his sticks are the direct object. The action is both direct and indirect. Direct in relation to the sticks and indirect in relation to the crowd. Yes, Quarry.
Uh, is it the same with on and in?
Yeah, yeah, all prepositions. Prepositions before objects indicate an indirect relationship between the verb and that object. Okay, let me see who wants to speak.
No, sorry, I just click
Okay,
twice. Sorry.
okay. So again, number 3. Gus smashed the electric guitar with a sledgehammer. And how about now? Is this canonical or non-canonical? How do you feel about this sentence? Is it positive,
Yes, it's
declarative?
canonical.
It's
Yeah,
canonical, positive, declarative, non. It's active, it's non-subordinate, and so on.
yeah.
Okay, so uh, let's go to the analysis of the third sentence. So in this sentence, Gus is the subject. Okay, and all the rest is the predicate. Now, how many verbs do we have in this sentence?
Just
Just one.
one.
Just one, which is the verb to smash. So Smashed is the predicator over here. Okay, smashed is the predicator. Now let's take a look at the functions in terms of phrases. Okay, in terms of phrases of the other elements. We all know that with is a preposition. Yeah, it indicates the instrument that he used. Okay, so the way that he did it. A sledgehammer. A sledgehammer, well, sledgehammer is a noun, and a is a determiner. Okay, it's any sledgehammer, it's not a specific one. So we call it a determiner, even though it's not determining, I mean, saying it's specific. Saying it's non-specific is also a way of determining. Okay, so we call it articles in general, we call determiners. Now, what we have of the junction of the determiner and this noun is a noun phrase. Do you all agree? It's a noun phrase. Noun
Yeah,
phrases,
I think
how do I know? Noun phrases behave either as the subject or object of the sentence. Okay? Noun phrases are either one or the other, either the subject or the object, direct or indirect. Okay? As we have with before this noun phrase, we can use the technique, the more basic technique, to say there is a preposition before the object, so it is indirect object. Or we can look at this from a different perspective. The sledgehammer was the instrument that he used to hit the electric guitar. The final object of action was not the sledgehammer, but the electric guitar. This was the real object, and the and the instrument to do that was the sledgehammer. So this is another way to think of indirect objects as an instrument, okay, as a means to achieve the final direct object. Okay, so Gus is the subject, smashed as the predicator. The electric guitar is the object to which Gus establishes a direct relationship. He smashed the electric guitar. There's no mediation of a preposition here. Okay, but there is the mediation of the sledgehammer. So the sledgehammer is the indirect object. Any questions up to now? Tá tudo bem por aqui, gente?
I have a question, but it's about adverbial phrase. And in the test, you will ask what the type of adverbial phrase is, like time, place. Yes.
We have an adverbial phrase over here in number 2, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah,
Yes.
after the final song. Okay, after the final song is an adverbial phrase for time. If you prefer, you can indicate here. Okay. It is not determinative to study the relationship between verbs, subjects, and objects. Okay, adverbial phrases will indicate time, manner, mode. Okay, sorry, and so on. Just like in Portuguese. Okay, in Portuguese we have the figure of the adjunto adverbial. Okay, de tempo, de modo, de what else? Can you help me? Tem
Essa parte eu tinha
place.
entendido. Era só para perguntar se você vai cobrar na prova os tipos de adverbial phrase. No caso, se vai ser de tempo, de lugar,
Oh
ou
no,
se é só para identificar.
yes, you have to identify them. Okay, if you would like to be specific, that's okay, but depends, of course, on the instructions, on the directions of the exercise. It's not probable. Okay, it's not probable. Uh, but anyway, We know that by a simple analysis of the semantics of this. Yeah, after the final song, I mean, after something, so it's time. It's like you did in the exercise about the suffixes, temporal, spatial, and so on. Okay, it's kind of intuitive. Okay, but I won't be, I don't intend to be that specific. Okay, I want you more to understand the relationship in sentences of noun phrases and verb phrases. This is my focus: noun phrases and verb phrases. Okay. In other
All right.
words, subjects, predicates, predicators, objects, direct and indirect. Okay.
Okay,
Next
thank you.
one. Okay. Next one. Felix stunned the giraffe with a radar gun. And how about now? Do we have a canonical clause? Yes or no?
Yes.
Number 4. Yes.
This is canonical. Subject, Felix. Predicate, stun the guitar with a radar gun. The predicator is stunned, the only verb. Okay, let's now see the other functions. Now, if we know that Felix is the subject and all the rest here is the complement, what we have to do is to isolate the phrases in their syntactic functions. We have already discussed that stunned is the only verb, so naturally it is the predicator. Now we have two objects in relation to the verb, the giraffe and the radar gun. Now it's pretty much the same as the previous sentence, isn't it? We have with indicating an instrument, which is the indirect object. And we have something that was stunned, that's the giraffe, which is the object that Felix acts over directly. Okay, now let's understand this. A radar gun and the giraffe, they are both objects. One of them is direct, the orange one, and the other one, the purple one, is indirect. Because of being objects, both of them are uh, noun phrases. Okay, who raised the hand or question? Yes, Mateus.
What's up? Okay. So first, in that sentence, I have two questions actually. You said that
Yeah,
as stun was the only verb, it's the predicator. So if there are
yeah.
more than two verbs, no, more than one verb. For example, there are three verbs in the sentence. All three of them are the predicator, or just the main
Let's
one.
take a case like Felix has been stunning the guitar. Oh, sorry, the giraffe. Felix has been stunning the giraffe with a radar gun. Now you have to decide which verb is more important to be the predicator. It is the core of
I
the
think
action.
stunning.
Yeah, the verb to stun. Yes, okay. The main verb, the predicator,
So
is
only the
always the
main
main
verb.
verb
Okay.
of the predicate.
And
Yeah, the main verb of the predicate.
the other
Any
question
other
I said I
question?
had.
Yeah.
So so I a radar gun, a sledgehammer. This is the determiner, right? As you said in the previous sentence,
Yeah, it's a determiner.
right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Because you didn't mention
Yes.
this time, so I got.
Oh yeah. I rather guns at the terminal. Okay, if you would like to be specific, but in this case, in the directions, I just say to analyze the objects and the predicative complements and so on. So that's why I didn't talk anything about syntactic functions of words, but just of phrases. Okay, and that's why we are not being that specific. Well, if I be that specific in the exam, is it okay? Yes, it is okay, right? And maybe I'd consider some more lenience in your mistakes if I see you are more specific in other exercises. Uh, I always consider everything that you write in an exam or in a kind of assignment. Okay. Next one, let's not go to the original. Pandora opened the box very slowly. Let's see the original just to check if it's canonical. Here, very slowly, Pandora opened the box. And now, Again, we have the case of the number 2. After the final song, comma, the drummer hold his sticks at the crowd. Here it's pretty much the same. We also have an adverbial phrase indicating how Pandora did it. Okay, very slowly, comma, Pandora opened the box. Now, is this canonical? Because of this structure, is it canonical?
It's not.
It's not, so we have to turn it into canonical. And the solution is pretty much the same of number 2. So we write it like this: Pandora, open the box very slowly. And now very slowly is what? The standard of colors is not
The
clear
way,
anymore. So yes, it's the way. So I will
the way is
write it
still
down here. Write it down here.
an
What kind
adverbial.
of phrase is this?
Adverb phrase.
Adverb phrase. Why? Because slowly is
Yes.
an adverb of mode, and very is an adverb of intensity. Okay, so it's an adverbial phrase. Oh, sorry. All right. Now, let's see what happens with the rest. Pandora opened the box. This is the simplest type of clause, isn't it? She
Yeah, it
did
is
something. Yes,
something. Yeah.
this is the simplest one. Subject, verb, and object. Is there any kind of mediation, intermediate instance between Pandora and the box? Or she did it directly to the box?
She did it directly. So
So
that's the
there is no
direct
doubt,
object.
yeah, there is no doubt that Pandora is the subject. Open the box very slowly is the predicate. The only verb here is the verb to open, so it's the predicator. And the box, the relationship between Pandora and the box, the opening of the box is done directly. So the box is the direct object. Okay. Next one, the original sentence is Thomas gave his moon pie to Benji. I think at this moment of the explanation, it's not necessary to tell you that this is a canonical structure. Thomas, as the agent, gave his moon pie to Benji. So there is a giving and there is someone that receives it. Okay, so Thomas gave his moon pie to Benji. It's declarative, it's positive, it's non-passive, it's non-subordinate, non-coordinate, it's non-exclamative, it's not an interjection. So consequently, it is canonical. No change in the sentence is necessary. So we have Felix as the subject and, oh, sorry, Thomas as the subject and gave his moon pie to Benji as the predicate. Now, what is the predicator? The predicator is the only verb when there is
Gave.
only one. When there is more than one, it is the main verb. So gave is the predicator. Okay, now he gave something to someone. The thing that he gave, he acted directly over it. He got it with his hands to give it. So his moon pie is a noun phrase. Okay, moon pie is a noun. Yeah, and this is the direct object. And Benji was the receiver of the moon pie. He was the receiver of the action of giving. He was the direction of the action. This is one of the definitions of indirect object. So Benji is the indirect object and could be easily substituted by him. Him is a type of pronoun that we call what? What kind of pronoun is him?
him,
her.
uh, object pronoun.
Yes, object pronoun. Okay, because it plays the role of object. We have the subjective pronouns I, you, he, she, it, and the object pronoun me, him, her, them, and so on. Okay, why are they called so? Because object pronouns play the role of object in a sentence, and subjective pronouns play the role of a subject. Next one is after breakfast. Vera drove to the mission with Ted. Well, at this moment, you may have concluded that this clause is canonical or non canonical.
Wait, I just had a disconnection.
After
Which sentence?
breakfast.
Oh, it's non-canonical.
And what is the solution?
You
We have
can
already come across the problem. What is
we
it?
can put after breakfast to the end of the sentence.
Oh, yeah. So let's see how it happens. So we have now Vera drove to the mission with Dad after breakfast. Well, after breakfast is what kind of phrase? Breakfast is a noun, but how about after?
After, if I remember correctly, that's a preposition, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But let me see. Let me check the dictionary. It is a preposition, but I'd like to discuss the notion that after breakfast brings. After as a preposition, preposition as well, and after as adverb. Do you see the dictionary page?
Yes.
Okay. So after can be either a preposition or an adverb. Now I want you to consider what is the case here. Breakfast, we all know it's a noun.
It's
So
an adverb.
why is it an adverb and not a preposition?
Porque está determinando quando foi que Vera drove the mission
Very
to
good.
the...
Very good. So from your explanation, we not only conclude that after is an adverb in this case here, but that also it's an adverb of
Time.
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 Okay. So this is an adverbial phrase for time, right? Now let's isolate it. Let's just classify it with the proper color for adverbial phrase of time. Let's concentrate in this. Vera drove to the mission with Ted. Okay. So Vera, you all know it's the subject, and drove to the mission with Ted is the predicate. The only verb there is the verb to drive. So it is the predicator. Now, who drives a car to some place. Okay. Now the car, I'm driving my car to UFMA. My car is my direct object. This is what I act directly over. And UFMA is my destination. It's the direction of my driving. So it's my indirect object. So in this case of the mission is the direction of the driving. Okay. So it's an indirect object. Do you all agree with that?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And how about Ted? What is the function of Ted here? She drove to the mission with Ted.
He is the company of Vera, but I don't know
Yeah,
the,
but
the phrase.
nothing guarantees that Ted drove as well.
I think
If
that is also an indirect object. The person
yes,
who went with her.
yes, nothing guarantees that Ted drove in the sentence. It's not clear. If it were Vera and Ted drove to the mission, then we would have a compound subject, Vera and Ted. Okay, they would be a compound subject, and then the mission would be the only indirect object. But in this case, according to what we can determine, Ted, as you said, Quern, is just a company. He's just a fellow traveler. So we cannot guarantee anything. So she's acting over Ted as well. Ted is passively inside the car. Okay, considering that Ted didn't drive, so he's just an indirect object of her driving. Okay, she drove, she performed the action, and Ted was inside the car. Okay, so he was an indirect object of her driving as well, just as the mission, because the mission is the destination. Okay, any question?
Então ele vai ter a mesma função de the mission, yes.
Yes, if you look at the sentence, you will see that the verb
To
to drive
preposition,
has
yes.
two indirect objects. Yes, the preposition is that old technique that we can use to identify indirect objects. Vera drove with Ted. Okay, so Ted is the indirect object because of the preposition with. This is a way to decide the matter. But another way to decide the matter is imagining the situation that Ted hasn't driven anything. Okay, now what I'm trying to force your imagination here is that if the sentence was Vera and Ted drove, then we would have a different setting to analyze. Then we would have a compound subject, Vera and Ted, okay? Which is not the case. Is this okay?
Ok.
We are
Yes.
almost finishing number one. So, next one, even though this one is kind of difficult, even though it rarely rains here, Professor Legree carries his umbrella wherever he goes. How about now? What happens now? Even though it rarely rains here, how many phrases do we have here?
There are to be honest, when I I see that you're checking the key of answers. In my
Yes.
case, I did the activity and then I went to check on the key after
Uh
I
huh.
did.
Uh huh.
So this one was wrong because I thought we would have to put even though it rarely hangs here to the end of the sentence. I thought that was non-canonical, but
It
it
is.
is.
It is non-canonical. I agree with you. This whole thing here, number 8, is
Yeah.
non-canonical because there
So
is a relationship between two clauses. We have two
so I
clauses.
so I tried to put it into canonical, but then in the answer it wasn't. You didn't change anything, so I was
Uh,
wrong.
I didn't change anything because I decided to treat like this. Clause 1, clause 2. Understand? What we
That
have
makes
here,
sense.
sorry?
It makes sense.
Yeah, it's an approach. It's not the only, okay? But it's one of the approaches. What kind of approach did you use? Would you like to share?
Well, I've corrected that already, corrected it already, but I just changed the order. Professor
Okay,
Legree carries his umbrella wherever he goes, even though
even
it
though
rarely hangs here.
that's okay as well. You have to trust yourselves, okay? Because it would be right as well. What I decided to do was what was less painful, let's put it this way, which is putting a period and then forgetting about even though and just analyzing. It rarely rains here because I know even though is a coordinator. Okay, so I decided to eliminate the coordinative feature of the sentence. This is a possibility, not the only one. Okay, but let's see the way I solved it, and then you can share the way you solve it. So if you see, even though here it's in yellow, meaning it is going to be disconsidered. Okay, and then let's just put slash here, not to make confusion, instead of the comma. It rarely rains here. Information number one. Is it full information? If I tell you
Yes.
it rarely rains here, it is understandable. Do you all agree?
Mm-hmm.
So what I have to do is defining what is the subject. It, wrong color, I'm sorry. Rarely is the rarely rains here. Rains is the predicator because it's the only verb of this clause. Okay, I'm just working with this clause. Rains is the predicator, and rarely, let me change the color because it's much similar to the other. Rarely is what?
An adverb.
It's an adverb. Okay, so it's the way it rains, an adverb of mode. Okay, in fact, an adverb of frequency. I'm sorry. Okay, and here is the place where it rarely rains. So here is a preposition,
Was it preposition? Yeah.
but a preposition playing the role of determining a place. So uh, it's a prepositional indicating the place where it rarely rains. So the object is implicit by what we call a datic structure. Teacher, you have never told us about datics. Datics are words that acquire meaning according to the context. For example, he. Who is he? Well, depends on who we mentioned before. Or tomorrow. What is the meaning of tomorrow? Tomorrow is always the day after, the present day. Tomorrow is Thursday. But tomorrow, our tomorrow for tomorrow will be Friday. So we call this kind of words that change meaning according to the context as datics, okay? Which is the case of here. Here in São Luís do Maranhão is São Luís. It's a noun. It plays the role of an object, okay? But it's just a preposition.
Date. How do you spell it? G-H-E-I-C?
Like this,
Uh, Oh, yes. Okay.
datic, okay? In Portuguese, deitico, okay? Very important for us in discourse analysis, okay? We use datics all the time to try to make hypotheses on utterances and texts, okay? So we check a lot of the use of datics. Well, now let's go to the second clause. Professor Legree carries his umbrella wherever he goes. And now we have a more complex clause in which Professor Legree is the subject and he carries something, which is the only verb. So carries is the predicator for this second part. Okay. What he carries and acts over directly is his umbrella, which is the direct object. And how about this? Wherever he goes. Well, go is a verb. So you could say this is a verb phrase, but it's not really the case. He goes. It is still a verb phrase. But when I put wherever he goes, I'm referring to what? I could change it
To
for
any place. To any place.
anywhere he goes. Yeah, anywhere he goes. And what is this? when I talk about the place?
Adverbial phrase.
An adverbial phrase. Okay. This is the most complex one. That's why it's the last one. Okay. So I hope you understood that. So what did I do? I took the coordination feature of the sentence and I turned this complex sentence into two canonical clauses by means of putting period here and period over here at the end of the second clause, okay? And working with them as separate information. And how about even though? What is the function of even though?
It's a coordinator.
It's a coordinator, okay? So it's the way, it's the kind of glue that I use to put idea number one and idea number two together. Oh, teacher, but it's at the beginning of the sentence. Yes, some coordinators happen to appear at the beginning of sentences. Another example is either or, which you put part of the coordinator at the beginning of the sentence and the second part of the coordinator at the middle. Okay? Any question about this?
My answer was like this. Professor Legree carries his umbrella wherever he goes, even though it rarely rains here. Okay, that was the sentence. And then Professor Legree as the subject, carry as the predicator, carries his umbrella wherever he goes as the predicate, umbrella as the direct object, wherever
Mm-hmm.
he goes as the adverb,
Mm-hmm.
even though as a coordinator,
Mm-hmm. Perfect.
each as a subject. You would
Mm-hmm.
consider that?
Yes, perfect. What you
Okay.
did was finding another path to get to the same place.
Mm,
I'd like to have results, not methods, okay? The method you use is the one that's more intuitive for you, okay? And this method seemed to be more intuitive for you, okay? So I'm not going to judge your method, but the results that you get. You got the same results as I did, and this is perfect, okay? This is all right. So we have now the exercise on relative clauses. Now, what are relative clauses and why are they called relative? Because they establish relationships with other clauses or with other elements on clauses. And then we have the subject pronouns and object pronouns. We have talked about them minutes ago when I talked about the function of him in one of the sentences as the indirect object. So, in the second exercise, I want you to decide whether the relative pronoun who or that or which are being used as a subject pronoun, I mean, playing the role of the subject, or as an object pronoun. In other words, playing the role of an object. Okay, so let's check this. Do you know the girl who I danced with? Who is the pronoun who referring to? To the girl, to you, to me? Who is it referring to?
it's referring to the girl
To the
who
girl.
the guy danced.
And what is the function of the girl in this clause? It would be difficult to tell if we keep the interrogative structure. But if we turn it into a positive structure, a canonical clause, we would have a sentence like, I danced with the girl. Do you all agree?
Yes.
I danced with the girl. Do you know her? You see? So this who is referring to the girl. What is the function of the girl in the sentence, I danced with the girl?
The object.
The object. Okay. So is this who being used objectively or subjectively?
Objectively.
Objectively, because it's referring to the girl. Okay. Who and the girl refer back to the same entity. Now, the girl is the one I danced with. She was the one that received my action of dancing. So it's being used objectively. Is this clear for you? That who, in this case here, is an objective pronoun. Clear?
Yes.
Let's go to the second. Do you know the girl who danced with me? And now, do you think things change? We
Change
still have,
because now the girl is the subject.
yeah,
She's
we
the
still
one
have a
who danced
non-canonical
with the
clause.
guy.
Would you please give me the canonical version for this? Take it
The girl
from
danced with me.
the girl danced with me. Now, who is the object?
Me.
Me. Who's the subject?
The girl.
And who is who referring to? Is who is still referring to the girl?
Yes.
Yeah. But now, in the canonical version of this question, girl is the subject. So this is a subjective pronoun. Easy? It's just a
Oh,
way.
it
It,
is. It
it's
is.
just a way of using your logics. It's non-canonical, so you have to turn it to canonical and then analyze it. Let's go to the next one. The apples that are lying on the table are bad. And now we have a that. What is this that referring to?
The apples.
The apples. So that and the apples are the same entity. The apples that are lying on the table are bad. It's the same as saying the apples are bad, period. The apples are lying on the table. Now, what is the function of the apples? Subject or object?
Is the subject.
So this is a subjective pronoun. And from this moment on, I have myself to check because I have to
It
be,
is. It is.
yes, object pronoun. Object pronoun. Let's see why. The apples that are lying on the table are bad. The apples. Okay, let's see. Maybe we should consider this. There are some apples, and some of them are lying on the table. The apples that are lying on the table are bad, but not all the apples. Let me see the explanation for this. Subject pronoun. Yes, it's correct. It was correct. It's because the second one is too similar and I got confused. Subject. Yeah, I didn't get that mad yet. Now, the second one, the next one, similar to it. The apples that we bought in the shop are bad. Now we have a problem. Is this that referring to what? To we or to apples?
Also to the apples, but
But what's the problem now? Is that we bought some apples. They are bad. We have two ideas here. The apples, structurally speaking, is the subject of this sentence. But this clause brings two ideas that we bought apples in the shop and that they are bad. So what is really bad? What is more important here? What is the function of the apples that we bought? Why is this objective and not subjective. Consider,
Because
yes,
because
Matheus.
the apples, I can say, they didn't do any action. The action was to get bought, so they are the object.
Yes, yes, you could rephrase this, okay, like this. We bought
Bought the apples.
apples.
Yeah.
Shop.
You could also rephrase number three as the apples are bad, so that's why it's the subject.
Yes, they're bad. Okay. We bought the apples in the shop. So the apples here is the object. Okay. The direct object. We bought apples in the shop and they are bad. So apples is in fact the object. And that's why in this case we have an objective use of that. It's an object pronoun. Okay? Number 5. We will stay at a hotel which is not far from the beach. And now, which is referring back to what?
To the hotel.
Yeah. Now consider, we will stay at a hotel. What is the function of a hotel?
The place where they will stay.
In terms of syntax, it is subject, verb, object.
Object.
What kind of object?
Direct. Wait. Yeah. Direct.
Direct, direct or
Yeah.
indirect?
Direct. It's not a preposition, is it? I don't. No, I
Yeah,
think it's direct.
indirect. Why?
Indirect. It's
Because
a
it's the
preposition.
destination of my staying. Okay, I will stay at a hotel.
Ah, não, tem o at, verdade.
Yeah, at a hotel.
Não-
Okay. So, well, it's not important to solve this exercise, but it's just to extend and practice more this notion of direct and indirect. Okay. So we will stay at a hotel, which is not far from the beach. Okay. Which is referring back to the hotel. So it's objective. Let me check. Number 5.
I don't think so. I think I checked and it's subject.
So let's try to split into two ideas, if to see if it works. Let's try to rewrite
No,
it like this.
It's because we stay at a hotel. It is not far from the beach. So the
Yeah.
hotel is the subject of
Oh
the
yeah. Oh
second
yeah.
phrase. That's why
Yeah.
it's subject.
Yeah, good. Very good. Thank you, Matheus. Ainda bem que alguém está com raciocínio frio aqui. Ok. We will stay at a hotel. Até aqui, ok. Hotel é objeto indireto. Opa, will com double L. Até aqui, ok. Essa é a informação número 1. Ok? O which aqui está conectando duas ideias. A ideia 2 é the hotel is not far from the beach. E nessa segunda ideia, the hotel é o sujeito. E aí sim, faz sentido. Então, o uso disso aqui é subjective. Não. Vocês pegaram o raciocínio do Matheus, pessoal?
Sim, eu tinha pensado nisso também, mas eu não sabia se estava certo.
Eu fui induzido pela estrutura muito simples da oração, né, a cair no fato de que ela está pronta. Ela não está pronta, ela tem duas ideias. We will stay at a hotel. Which hotel? The one that's not far from the beach. Ok? So it's subjective. The one. The one é um pronome. Se é pronome, é nome. Se é nome, ou é objeto direto ou é sujeito, mas inicia a oração. The one which is not far from the beach. The hotel which is not far from the beach. So subjective. That's right. Now, number 6. Again, we will stay at a hotel which my friend recommended to us. And now. Provavelmente vocês estão vendo que os exercícios estão em contraste, então vão querer arriscar. Esse é o objective. Mas por quê?
Esse é objeto porque it's object because the hotel is not the one that performed the action. The action was my friend recommended a hotel to us. Has recommended a hotel to us. So, which refers to that.
Yeah, it refers to what was recommended to me. And what was recommended to me, recommending, who recommends something or someone or some place. So it is an object, okay? The object of the verb to recommend, okay? So this is an objective. Okay? Okay, ou mais ou menos okay?
The action was to recommend, not to stay.
Yeah, the core action is to recommend, and the hotel was the object of this recommendation. That's perfect. Okay. Number 7, that is a museum which I like very much. And how about now? What is the use of which? What is which referring back to? What's the word which refers to?
To the museum.
So, this is a museum, period. I like this museum very much, period. What is the function of museum in both sentences? This is
the object
it's
of
the
both
object
sentences.
in both sentences. Next one, that is a museum which lies in the heart of the town. Now let's split into two ideas. Period. That is a museum. Here, it is an object. But the museum lies in the heart of the town. What is the function of the museum in the second sentence?
The subject.
The subject. Okay. Now that is a museum which lies in the heart of town. This which is referring to the museum that happens to be in the heart of town. And in the second sentence, the information is this one. So it's objective or subjective?
Subjective.
Subjective. Number 9, this is the man who Barbara visited in Scotland. This one is similar to the first one. The girl I danced with, the girl that danced with me. In this case, who is referring to the man or to Barbara?
To the man.
Just a moment, I have to answer the door. Do give me 1 minute.
Road there.
Sorry about that. Okay, this is the man who Barbara visited in Scotland. Who is referring to the man? Now, how could you rephrase that to have a more clear analysis of agent and receiver?
Barbara
Uh,
visited the man in Scotland.
So the man is the
Object.
object of Barbara's visiting. As who refers back to the man, the use of this pronoun who in this case is objective noun. And finally, this is the man who lives in Scotland. And now, who is still referring to
Man.
the man. There's no other entity to refer to. How could you rephrase this to have a more clear idea?
The man lives in Scotland.
Yeah, this is the man, period. The man lives in Scotland, period. Subjective. Wouldn't say it's difficult. I'd say it requires some method. Okay. Well, thank